Okay, guys, let's continue with our social studies. Um, we're going to continue reading about the three branches of government. The three branches of government includes the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch. Each branch has a special role in the function of the United States government and the running of the country. The three branches were established by the United States Constitution to separate the powers of government, right? So that means the government has the executive level, which is where you're dealing with the president, the legislative, which is dealing with the House of Senate and the House of Representatives, and the judicial branches, which deals with the courts, the Supreme Courts, etc. The legislative branch includes the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Senate is made up of 100 senators, 2 from each state, elected by its citizens. Each senator serves for 6 terms, but may serve consecutive terms. That means they could be in there forever, really, until they get voted out. The vice president is the head of the Senate and only votes, the vice president only votes if there is a tie among the senators. If they're having a congressional meeting and they're trying to come up with, like, for instance, right now with the coronavirus situation, they're voting and they're discussing stimulus packages for certain people. Right now, some people qualified and some didn't qualify, so they're back in meetings to try to figure out how do we get every United States citizen something, based on their income, etc. So they go into debates. So when they have a tie, the vice president is the one that breaks that tie with his vote. That's what that's saying. The Senate also approves nominations by the president to cabinet, Supreme Court, federal courts, and other positions. All treaties are agreements made with other countries, must be approved by a 2/3 vote. All right? 2/3 out of the votes. 2 out of 3. The House of Representatives is made up of 435 elected officials, elected from each of the 50 states, with a number from each state based on the state's population. So right now we're dealing with how do you know how many people, how many representative is going to be representing a particular state. This is where the U.S., they do the census every 10 years. That's how they figure out how many people are in a particular state. So this is why it's important for us to fill out our U.S. Census form and go online and say how many people are living in your household. That way your state can be represented, as far as funding. Because let's say you don't fill out that census, they don't really have an accurate idea of how many people are in your state, so you get less funding for schools, etc. That's just one example. They are elected, the House of Representatives are elected by its citizens and serves 2-year terms. Okay, remember the Senate serves 6 years. The House of Representatives serves only 2 years. but they could serve consecutive terms also. The leader of the House is called the Speaker of the House and is elected by the representative. There is like a Speaker of the House of Representative. Okay, so now you have the House of Representative on one side, you have the Senate House, the Senate on the other side. Currently, the House of Representative in the United States is ran by the Democratic Party, and the Senate is ran by the Republican Party. Okay. Okay, both the Senate and the House of Representatives must vote and ratify bills for them to become laws. They have to vote and ratify bills for them to become laws. They may also override presidential vetoes of the laws that were passed. Let's say the House of Senate and the House of Representatives pass a law, right? Let's say a law was passed by the voting powers, and the president decide he's going to veto certain laws. They can override it. They can override whatever the president say. Oh, we override what you say. Let's say the president don't agree with certain laws that passed. They can override him and say, back burner, we override you. Okay? The executive branch includes the president as the leader of the country, as well as the vice president. He or she is elected by the entire country to a 4-year term and may serve only 2 terms in office. For example, President Obama served his first term, which was 4 years. Then we voted him in again, and he served another 4 years. So they were there for 8 years in the White House, running the country, representing the country, really. Whew. So that's 2 terms, 4 and 4, 2 terms. The president approves and carries out laws passed by the legislative branch, though may also veto laws. The president also appoints or removes cabinet members. Just like with President Trump, he came in and he started firing folks. People got fired left and right. Trump firing everybody. So he appoint, he hire and fire. If you agree with Trump, you get fired. Okay. The president also appoints and removes cabinet members who are considered assistant to the president. The president offer advice on running the country. Who are considered assistants to the president or offer advice on running the country, right? They might give him some advice that he don't like. Well, Trump don't like. If he doesn't like your advice, fired. America is a laughing stock of the entire world right about now. That's why I'm laughing about it, just so you guys could get an idea of what's going on here. I have to bring some life to this boring topic. They include the Secretary of Defense. These are the people who the president appoint. The Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and several others. The leader of the country also negotiates treaties, foreign policy. Is President Trump good at foreign policy? Not. Close the border. Close the border. And acts as the head of state for the country. He's the head of state for our country. And is a commander of chief of the armed forces, for the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine, Coast Guard. He's the commander in chief. He's the boss. Even though you haven't been in the military, you are still, as long as you are the president of this country, you are the commander of chief, commander of all of those forces, okay, of the armed forces. You're the boss. Whether you served your time or not, you're still the boss. So it's sad when you have a president who have no idea what we veterans have gone through. He has no idea what boot camp is about. He has no idea of the military protocols. So he'd have to kind of lean on the people who are the commanders in chief in those armed forces to kind of guide him, right? If he listens, fine. If he doesn't, it puts the commanders in a bad position where, let's say the president decide, we're going to go to war because I don't like North Korea. Let's push the button. It's really not up to him. These commanders are not going to put us out there in harm's way just because you have an attitudinal adjustment problem. So even though the president has the power to start a war somewhere, the commanders can really they have influence then. They could disobey the direct order and deal with the court martialing and all that stuff that they have to deal with. But they, more than likely we have presidents who kind of respect these generals, when they say something, no, we shouldn't go get bin Laden right now. Let's wait. They really, the president really rely on their intelligence, because let's say we are going to, the president may not realize we have Secret Service or we have spies out there, and then you're going to start a war, or let's say he decided to push the red button, but we have so many people, spies in that area, you have to kind of take advice from the commanders and say, what, let's hold off until we get all our people out. That's just an example. The judicial branch includes the Supreme Court. 9 judges. There are 9 judges in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, 9 judges who oversees the United States court system. The court consists of 8 judges or justices, plus 1 chief justice. 8 plus 1 is 9. And there are no term limits. Some justices serve until they die. So, I think we only have 1 black Chief Justice or Supreme Court Justice, Clarence Thomas. If you guys follow history. And then we have Kavanaugh is that his last name? The last guy that they put the 3rd degree on. We didn't really want him, but President Trump wanted him. So whoever the president wants, he's the one that assigned these judges. Let's continue. They are nominated by the president and approved by the Senate. So, like I was saying to you, if the Senate is the Republican Party, so they control the judges, right? They control who's going to be in that seat. So they give the president more power because the president is a part of the Republican Party and the Senate is Republican. So the House of Representatives, they're limited with their power, really. The Supreme Court's responsibilities include explaining the meaning of the Constitution and laws, deciding whether something is constitutional or unconstitutional, meaning it is permitted or not permitted. They often decide new ways to interpret laws. like right now with the internet stuff. These people who are internet savvy, and they're hacking into these systems and robbing the banks through the systems, you know, through these computers and stuff. This is like a new avenue. So the courts, you know, have to decide what is constitutional and not unconstitutional, etc. Okay, they have to interpret the laws that the founding father created, because back then they didn't create anything about the computers, but there are certain things in that Bill of Rights that, you know, that they follow. Okay, so what these judges do, they decide what is constitutional based on the time that we're living in. And they settle court cases between 2 or more states. Let's say 2 or more states are having beef. You know, the Supreme Court kind of handle that situation. In 1787, the writers of the Constitution did not want one person or a group of people to have complete power over the country or its citizens. The state's leaders, who are the governors, wanted a national government that was strong but also fair. Remember we talk about the federal government? You know, we needed a strong government. Okay, they wanted individual freedoms protected. Right? Bill of Rights, remember? As well as preventing the government from abusing its powers. We have to have the balance, the checks and balance. The 3 branches of government is a system of checks and balance. You know, you have to balance it out. That's why you have 3 parts of the branches. Used to prevent this from occurring. This helps to make sure the power is shared by each branch. The 3 branches of the government are expected to work together, cooperate, and do what is best for the citizens of the country. Right now it's a coronavirus situation, so everyone's working together, you know. Each person in the government is elected by its citizen, who must trust the leaders to manage the country as best as possible. That's all we have on the branches of government. Question number 1 for the 3 branches of government. Which of the following includes a total of 535 representatives of the people? I put A, legislative branch, because the legislative branch includes the House of Senate and the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives have 435. The House of Senate has 100 representatives. So when you add those 2 together, the legislative branch gave us 535 total. Number 2, which of the following representatives of the United States serve 2-year terms? The answer is B, the House of Representatives. They only serve for 2 years, but they could, you know, run again, and then they get voted forever. You know, it doesn't expire. Which of the following are nominated by the president and approved by the Senate, the Supreme Court judges, right? The justices, the chief justices. Which of the following, number 4, which of the following branches of government interpret laws and decides court cases? The judicial branch, right? The judicial branch. That's C. Number 5, which of the following is head of the Senate? The vice president is head of the Senate, the House of Senate, right? Which of the following is used to make sure power is shared by the branches of government and prevents abuse of power? Checks and balance, right? That's number 6. And that's it for the 3 branches of government. And you guys have a wonderful day, and then we're going to continue on with World War I. For the next topic, I should do the World War I right now and just wrap it up. Let's read World War I. World War I. The First World War, also called War to End All Wars, it's also called the Great War and European War, are the names sometimes given to what ultimately became known as World War I. The title World War I only came about ultimately because several years later there was a Second World War. So World War I, or WW1, began July 28, 1914, and ended November 11, 1918. 4 years. 4 years of war. There were two sides during the war. There were the Allied powers, and there's the Central Powers. Under the Allied powers, you have four countries under the Allied powers. Allied. Central powers, there were four of them also. 4 countries. The Allied powers have France, allies with Russia, they're allied with Britain and the U.S. Those are the Allied powers. 4 superpower there. The Central powers, you had Germany, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. Okay, those 2. There were several reasons for World War I, the First War. Several reasons, which included countries concerned about their countries having too much military strength, and countries were afraid of losing economic and political positions in the world. It's all about power, even today. You know, with this money, the value of our money. You know, the value of our money is very important economically. You know, when I say the value of our money, for example, one of our dollar is like $1,000 pesos, so our money is more valuable than a Mexican dollar. And for like Belizean dollar, it's $1 US to $2 Belizean dollar. So stuff like that. That's very important economically. That's what they mean by economically. All right. The French were upset about losing land, right, in a previous war. And the military leaders of the countries were encouraging the conflict. These people, these presidents or these people running these countries know how to start a war. You know, they know how to get war started. Some people, there's conspiracy theory that says, oh, they'll start a war just to kill out all the black men. They'll start a war just to kill out all the poor people, poor black men or poor black women, because the rich people are not going to go to war. They're not going to join the military. Stuff like that. Okay, continuing. The event that ignited and started the war was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary. Remember, Austria-Hungary is on the Central Powers, right? But he was assassinated, meaning he was in line to become king. Following the death of Archduke, his country declared war on Serbia. There you go, war. Neighbors are fighting. This began a long chain of reaction. One war lead to the other, including Russia coming to defend Serbia, right? Russia coming from the Allied side to help somebody else against their enemy. And France declaring war on Germany. Here's France on the Allied side declaring war on the Central Power side, right? To help Russia. France is helping Russia because that's their allies, right? All of this resulted in Germany invading Belgium. So Germany on that side invading another place in order to get to France, because they have to get to this country. So they're going to invade this country that's near to France, right? which led to Britain. Now Britain going to get involved. Britain going to declare war on Germany for invading another country, right? As they were trying to get to their friend, France. Okay? It took only a few days for the Great War to begin in Europe. In all, 30 countries were a part of World War I. It began as a European war. It was a European war until, listen to this, until the United States entered the war in 1917. United States entered and became a part of the Allied powers, France, helping France, Russia, and Britain. Right? The two main areas of fighting took place on the Western Front, which was a long stretch of trenches that ran from the coast of Belgium to Switzerland. Most of the fighting on the front took place in France and Belgium. The other area was called the Eastern Front, which included fighting between Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Bulgaria versus Russia. So you got the Central Powers fighting against the Allied powers, right? Even though the United States entered the war, no fighting ever took place on American soil. That war was all the way overseas. It wasn't here on American grounds. The United States entered the war when a British passenger ship, called the Lusitania, was sunk. Here go America. You know, America is still close with Britain. Even though they got their independence from them, they still going to fight with Britain against whoever sunk that ship. The Germans. Sunk by a German who was on the Central Power side, who was sunk by a German submarine, killing all American passengers, including 128 Americans. You kill an American, we're going to war. They're coming after you because Americans are involved. So this is why the USA got involved, to help Britain against Germany, because Americans got killed on that ship. The people of the United States were upset and put pressure on the government to enter the war. Normally, you don't want to go to war. You know, it's like, oh, that's not that. We have nothing to do with that. Yeah, you got American people who got killed. So you do have to, so you as the people put pressure on your politicians and say, that cannot, it's going to show that we're weak if we don't help, if we don't go back and defend our people. You know, we lost folks. Okay? President Woodrow Wilson eventually decided America would enter the war with the goal of restoring peace. The goal is to restore peace to Europe, you know? The United States was in the war for only 7.5 months. However, 116,000 soldiers were killed in the fighting and 204,000 were wounded. Those are Americans. The United States entered the war as one of the allies, and immediately the balance of power shifted to their side. So by the United States helping the Allied powers, it helped them, because the Central Power was really whooping their butts until U.S. kind of balanced that. The Central Powers were not strong enough to defend their positions, right? There was an Allied operation that became known as the 100 Days Offensive, and the enemy was forced back to the border of Germany. Okay, by America stepping in, Germany had to push back and going back where y'all came from. With the United States and the rest of the Allies winning the war, the Central Powers, who lost, were forced to begin peace negotiations. All right. Ultimately, an agreement was reached called an armistice, which is ceasefire, armistice, for all fighting to end at the 11th hour and the 11th day on the 11th month, and World War I ended on November 11th, 1918. The Treaties of the Versailles was signed in 1919 to make it official. Let's do the questions real quick. Number 1, which of the following was also used as a term for World War I? All of the above. It's called the war to end all wars. It's called the Great War. It's called the European War. So that's why it's all the above. Which of the following countries was not a part of the Allied powers? A, Germany, because Germany is part of the Central Powers. Number 3, which of the following best describes Archduke Franz Ferdinand? The answer is C. He was assassinated. He was the assassinated heir to the Austria-Hungary throne. Number 4, which of the following countries declared war on Germany? Answer is D, France. That was in order. France declared war on Germany in order to help Russia. France, Russia, U.S., Britain. Those are allies. How many countries were a part of World War I? The answer is B, 30 countries. Number 6, which of the following caused the United States to enter World War I? Answer is B, the sinking of the Lusitania, the ship that killed the Americans, by the German. The German sunk that ship, and that's how America got involved. You guys, we're going to continue to World War II if we get a chance next time.